Greetings, one and all, once again to Exploring Arda, a Tolkien-centered podcast where I am your host, Jackson, and I will be going through a bunch of Tolkien's works other than Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So I feel like I've said that so much that that's my official intro. That's my official intro. Even though it's been 15 episodes or something, I don't know. Something like that. It's been a while, so that's going to be my official thing. So for me, I'm actually kind of glad. I'm like, hey, I actually have an intro and an outro, music, all that fancy stuff. It's interesting. It's coming into a really cool show so far. So hopefully you guys like what I'm doing with all that extra stuff. Let me know too. Let me know with any comments, or likes on the episodes. I would actually greatly appreciate that. So, as I said before in the other chapter, I think the last one, or I should say last episode, I'm going to move this here, okay, that from now on there's going to be a lot more longer chapters. Earlier there was a bunch of really short, here's what happened, and then 2 pages later it's done. A lot of these other chapters are going to be a lot longer, and it kind of goes more into the more story-wise, instead of this is the creation of this is the lands of these. Now it's more for instance, this chapter 16 is called Of Maeglin, so it's all about Maeglin, obviously. But so we're gonna be going more into I don't even know how to say it. It's just more story oriented and action, I guess, I suppose. So, I guess, if I don't want to confuse any of you guys, so we're going to be going right into the story so that I can just kind of get down into business, so that you guys will not have to listen to me rant for 3 minutes every episode at the beginning. So, let's just get right into the story. Hold on. I need to read this first because this is an interesting name. Aradhel Arfaniel, the White Lady of the Noldor, daughter of Fingolfin, dwelt in Nevrast with Turgon her brother, and she went with him to the Hidden Kingdom. But she wearied of the guarded city of Gondolin, desiring ever the more to ride again in the wide lands and to walk in the forest, as had been her wont in Valinor. And when 200 years had passed since Gondolin was full wrought, she spoke to Turgon and asked leave to depart. Turgon was loath to grant this, and long denied her, but at the last he yielded, saying, Go then, if you will, though it is against my wisdom, and I forebode that ill will come of it both to you and to me. But you shall go only to seek Fingon our brother, and those that I send with you shall return hither to Gondolin as swiftly as they may. But Aradhel said, I am your sister and not your servant, and beyond your bounds I will go as seems good to me. And if you begrudge me an escort, then I will go alone. Then Turgon answered, I grudge you nothing that I have, yet I desire that none shall dwell beyond my walls who know the way hither. And if I trust you, my sister, others I trust less to keep guard of their tongues. And Turgon appointed 3 lords of his household to ride with Aradhel, and he bade them lead her to Fingon in Hithlum, if they might prevail upon her. And be wary, he said, for though Morgoth be yet hemmed in the north, there are many perils in Middle-earth of which the lady knows nothing. Then Aradhel departed from Gondolin, and Turgon's heart was heavy at her going. So we get a little introduction here of Turgon, who's basically a lord of Gondolin, with the help of Ulmo, with his protection and whatnot. And then obviously Turgon's sister Aradhel is just even though she came to Gondolin and whatnot, she eventually was kind of, in a way, homesick of the forest and riding free in the fields and having all that open space, because Gondolin is obviously, not really trapped, but it's, the whole surrounded by mountains kind of thing with peaks and valleys, and not so much good for open prancing with horses and stuff like that, a lot of the... I feel like a lot of the elves just love to have that open space, I guess. That's just me personally, but I'm probably wrong. So let's just get back into the story. But when she came to the ford of Brithiac, here you go, in the river Sirion, she said to her companions, "Turn now south and not north, for I will not ride to Hithlum. My heart desires rather to find the sons of Feanor, my friends of old." And since she could not be dissuaded, they turned south as she commanded, and sought admittance into Doriath. But the march wardens denied them, for Thingol would suffer none of the Noldor to pass the girdle, save his kinsfolk of the house of Finarfin, and least of all those that were friends of the sons of Feanor. Therefore the march wardens said to Aradhel, "To the land of Caligorm, for which you seek, lady, you may by no means pass through the realm of King Thingol. You must ride beyond the girdle of Melian, to the south and or to the north. The speediest way is by the paths that lead east from the Brithiac, through Dimbar and along the north march of this kingdom until you pass the bridge of Escalduin and the fords of Eros, and come to the lands that lie beyond the hill of Himring. There dwell, as we believe, Caligorm and Curufin, and it may be that you will find them, but the road is perilous." So pretty much the guards at Thingol's gates they pretty much know what to do with the whole thing of last chapter of them being like, well, yeah, we're not going to admit all of the Noldor. Not again, because of their whole secret-y stuff. So that's pretty much what's happening here. Oh yeah, and then the whole thing of like Aradhel just kind of being like, well, I'm gonna go my own way, and if you guys want to come, I guess. It's that whole kind of mood. I'm trying to see, because like the book is kind of like visually it's kind of weird the way it is. I don't know, it seems like too much light is reflecting off of it, but we'll go into the story. I'll mess with that later, whatever. Then Aradhel turned back and sought the dangerous road between the haunted valleys of Erd Gorgoroth and the north fences of Doriath. And as they drew near to the evil region of Nandungortheb, their riders became enmeshed in shadows, and Aradhel strayed from her companions and was lost. They sought long for her in vain, fearing that she had been ensnared or had drunk from the poisoned streams of that land. But the fell creatures of Ungoliant that dwelt in the ravines were aroused and pursued them, and they hardly escaped with their lives. When at last they returned and their tale was told, there was great sorrow in Gondolin, and Turgon sat long alone, enduring grief and anger in silence. But Aradhel, having sought in vain for her companions, rode on, for she was fearless and hardy of heart, as were all the children of Finwë. And she held on her way, and crossing Escalduin and Eros, came to the land of Himlad between Eros and Calon, where Caligorm and Curufin dwelt in those days, before the breaking of the siege of Angband. At that time they were from home, riding with Caranthir east in Thargelion. But the people of Caligorm welcomed her, and bade her stay among them with honor until their lord's return. There for a while she was content, and had great joy in wandering free in the woodlands. But as the year lengthened and Caligorm did not return, she became restless again, and took to riding alone ever further abroad, seeking for new paths in untrodden glades. Thus it chanced in the waning of the year that Aradhel came to the south of Himlad, and passed over Calon, and before she was aware she was enmeshed in Nan Elmoth. I guess I can take a little break there too. So pretty much Aradhel and her companions, guards, whatever you want to call them, they're riding around Erd Gorgoroth, obviously a very bad place. With the whole Ungoliant thing, and I feel like my audio is way too loud in this episode. I don't know. Let me know if it's a little too loud. But pretty much her companions barely escaped their lives because of the dangerous creatures that abode in Gorgoroth, or Erd Gorgoroth, sorry. So that place is still very much the haunted hills, as oh, I'm sorry, guys. What was I saying? Oh yeah, okay. I have my memory slip like that sometimes. The whole creatures of Ungoliant and the shadows that still pour from there, and it's literally a poisoned area. So scary stuff. She escapes too, but she is welcomed with Caligorm's people, and she pretty much stays there. And well, yeah, when Caligorm doesn't return, she's just like, well, I'm not waiting for this guy. I'm just gonna start wandering again. So I guess that's just kind of how she is. Back to it here. In that wood in ages past Melian walked in the twilight of Middle-earth when the trees were young, and enchantment lay upon it still. But now the trees of Nan Elmath were the tallest and darkest in all Beleriand, and ere the sun never came. And there Eöl dwelt, who was named the Dark Elf. Of old he was of the kin of Thingol, but he was restless and ill at ease in Doriath, and when the girdle of Melian was set about the forest of Region, where he dwelt he fled. Where he dwelt, there you go. He fled thence to Nan Elmath. There he lived in deep shadow, loving the night and twilight under the stars. He shunned the Noldor, holding them to blame for the return of Morgoth, to trouble the quiet of Beleriand. But for the dwarves he had more liking than any other of the elven folk of old. From him the dwarves learned much of what passed in the land of the Eldar. Now the traffic of the dwarves down from the Blue Mountains followed two roads across East Beleriand, and the northern way, going towards the fords of Eros, passed nigh to Nan Elmath, and there Eöl would meet the Nagrim and hold converse with them. And as their friendship grew, he would at times go and dwell as guest in the deep mansions of Nogrod or Belagast. There he learned much of metalwork, and came to great skill therein, and he devised a metal as hard as the steel of the dwarves, but so malleable that he could make it thin and supple, and yet it remained resistant to all blades and darts. He named it Galvorn, for it was black and shining like jet, and he was clad in it whenever he went abroad. But Eöl, though stopped by his smith work, was no dwarf, but a tall elf of a high kin of the Teleri, noble though grim of face. Excuse me, guys. And his eyes could see deep into shadows and dark places. And it came to pass that he saw Aradhel, our Feniel, as he strayed among the tall trees among the borders of Nan Elmath, a gleam of white in the dim land. Very fair she seemed to him, and he desired her, and he said its enchantment. Oh man. Sorry, I'm coming down with the sickness. Oh man. I'm so sorry, guys. It might be a shorter episode then. Very fair she seemed to him, and he desired her, and he set his enchantments about her, so that she would not find the ways out, but drew ever nearer to his dwelling in the depths of the wood. There were his smithy and his dim halls, and such servants as he had, silent and secret, as their master. And when Aradhel, weary with wandering, came at last to his doors, he revealed himself, and he welcomed her and led her into his house. And there she remained, for Eöl took her to wife, and it was long ere any of her kin heard of her again. So, I'm so sorry, guys. This is a terrible, I don't know what's going on. Some sort of strep throat or something, probably. Yeah, so Eöl is Eöl's a very creepy dude. He literally sees Aradhel and pretty much puts a spell on her to lure her closer to his own place, and then he just like marries her. So that's I don't know, that's a it's a creepy thing to do. I feel like he's just kind of like not really like stalking on her, but he pretty much, Eöl just sees Aradhel and he's just like, oh well, yep, she's gonna be mine, I know it. And then she's still wandering, so he just like sets a weird spell that lures her closer. It's really creepy. But otherwise, Eöl is friends with the Nagrim, or the dwarves, which is really cool. And the whole image of Galvorn, yeah, his own black metal, basically, as hard as steel. I am so sorry, guys. So, this Galvorn armor, pretty much, I feel like, I don't know, because it says that he was clad in it. So, imagine just having like seeing this guy, this dark elf Eöl, and he's just like covered in this really cool. I want to imagine that it's like a shining, like a shining black, like a, I want to say a metallic black, because it is made out of metal. It's the metal that he made himself, and he's just walking around with that. It's kind of intimidating. I mean, I'm sure like any artwork of Eöl is probably pretty cool, because he does seem like a really cool character. And definitely like kind of like one of those smaller villains, but not really a villain at the same time. Just something that just pops into my head, stuff like that. All right. Back to the story. Sorry. It is not said that Aradhel was wholly unwilling, nor that her life in Nen Elmoth was hateful to her for many years. For though at Eäl's command she must shun the sunlight, they wandered far together under the stars or by the light of the sickle moon. For she might fare alone as she would, save that Eäl forbade her to seek the sons of Feanor, or any others of the Noldor. And Aradhel bore to Eäl a son in the shadows of Nen Elmoth, and in her heart she gave him a name in the forbidden tongue of the Noldor, Lomion, that signifies child of the twilight. But his father gave him no name until he was 12 years old. Then he called him Maeglin, which is sharp glance, for he perceived that the eyes of his son were more piercing than his own, and his thought could read the secrets of hearts beyond the mist of words. As Maeglin grew to full stature, he resembled in face and form rather his kindred of the Noldor, but in mood and mind he was the son of his father. His words were few save in matters that touched him near, and then his voice had a power to move those that heard him and to overthrow those that withstood him. He was tall and black-haired. His eyes were dark yet bright and keen as the eyes of the Noldor, and his skin was white. Often he went with Eäl to the cities of the dwarves in the east of Ered Lindon, and there he learned eagerly what they would teach, and above all the craft of finding the ores of metals in the mountains. Yet it is said that Maeglin loved his mother better, and if Eäl were abroad he would sit long beside her and listen to all that she could tell him of her kin and their deeds in Eldamar, and of the might and valor of the princes in the house of Fingolfin. All these things he laid to heart, but most of all, that which he heard of Turgon, and that he had no heir. For Elenwe his wife perished in the crossing of the Helcaraxe, and his daughter Idril Celebrimbor was his only child. Something is stuck in my throat, guys. I don't know what's going on here. I apologize many times over. In the telling of these tales, there was awakened in Aradhel a desire to see her own kin again, and she marveled that she had grown weary of the light of Gondolin, and the fountains in the sun, and the green sward of Tumladen under the windy skies of spring. Moreover, she was often alone in the shadows, when both her son and her husband were away. Of these tales also grew the first quarrels of Maeglin and Eäl, for by no means would his mother reveal to Maeglin where Turgon dwelt, nor by what means one might come thither, and he bided his time, trusting yet to wheedle the secret from her, or perhaps to read her unguarded mind. But ere that could be done, he desired to look on the Noldor and speak with the sons of Feanor, his kin that dwelt not far away. But when he declared his purpose to Eäl, his father was wrathful. "You are of the house of Eäl, Maeglin, my son," he said, "and not of the Galadrim. All this land is the land of the Teleri, and I will not deal or have my son deal with the slayers of our kin, the invaders and usurpers of our homes. In this you shall obey me, or I will set you in bonds." And Maeglin did not answer, but was cold and silent, and went abroad no more with Eäl, and Eäl mistrusted him. Man, this episode is having a lot of difficulties. I'll try to get through it all, but wow, I'm getting down with something. So yeah, Maeglin is an interesting character. He is born under moonlight, starlight, twilight, all that stuff. Only because Eäl is the dark elf that doesn't like the sunlight, which is interesting, and he's able to have Aradhel kind of like repeat his lifestyle, which would be kind of weird, like, oh, like you're gonna do everything my way now. Okay, but yeah, their only son is Maeglin, and he is curious about, I guess, his own kind of the Noldor and whatnot, and then he asks Aradhel all about it, and she starts talking about Gondolin. She's like, I kind of do miss those people. They're probably still over there, but Eäl's like, no. This is your home. You got to stay here. And then that's when all the arguments start to come up, and arguments mean bad news and whatnot. So, yeah, only makes sense. And I think I'm actually running low on battery, which is not good. So I'll try to hurry it up here. It came to pass that at the midsummer the dwarves, as was their custom, bade ale to a feast in Nogrod, and he rode away. Now Maeglin and his mother were free for a while to go where they wished, and they rode often to the eaves of the woods, seeking the sunlight, and desire grew hot in Maeglin's heart to leave Nan Elmoth forever. Therefore he said to Aradhel, Lady, let us depart while there is time. What hope is there in this wood for you and me? Here we are held in bondage, and no profit shall I find here, for I have learned that all my father has to teach, or that the Nogrim will reveal to me. Shall we not seek for Gondolin? You shall be my guide, and I will be your guard. Then Aradhel was glad, and looked with pride upon her son, and telling the servants of Ale that they went to seek the sons of Feanor, they departed and rode away to the north eaves of Nan Elmoth. There they crossed the slender stream of Calon into the land of Himlad, and rode on to the fords of Eros, and so westward along the fences of Doriath. Sorry. Now Ale returned out of the east sooner than Maeglin had foreseen, and found his wife and his son but 2 days gone. And so great was his anger that he followed after them even by the light of the day. As he entered the Himlad, he mastered his wrath and went warily, remembering his danger, for Celegorm and Curufin were mighty lords who loved Ale not at all. And Curufin, moreover, was of perilous mood. But the scouts of Aglon had marked the riding of Maeglin and Aradhel to the fords of Eros, and Curufin, perceiving that strange deeds were afoot, came south from the pass and encamped near the fords. And before Ale had ridden far across the Himlad, he was waylaid by the riders of Curufin and taken to their lord. Then Curufin said to Ale, What errand have you, dark elf, in my lands? An urgent matter, perhaps, that keeps one so sun-shy abroad by day. And Ale, knowing his peril, restrained the bitter words that arose in his mind. I have learned, Lord Curufin, he said, that my son and my wife, the White Lady of Gondolin, have ridden to visit you while I was from home, and it seemed to me fitting that I should join them on this errand. Then Curufin laughed at Ale, and he said, They might have found their welcome here less warm than they hoped, had you accompanied them. But it is no matter, for that was not their errand. It is not 2 days since they passed over the Arosiak, and thence rode swiftly westward. It seems that you would deceive me, unless indeed you yourself would have been deceived. And Ale answered, Then, Lord, perhaps you will give me leave to go and discover the truth of this matter. You have my leave, but not my love, said Curufin. The sooner you depart from my land, the better it will please me. Then Ale mounted his horse, saying, It is good, Lord Curufin, to find a kinsman thus kindly at need. I will remember it when I return. Man, I am so sorry, guys. Then Curufin looked darkly upon Ale. Do not flaunt the title of your wife before me, he said. For those who steal the daughters of the Noldor and wed them without gift or leave do not gain kinship with their kin. I have given you leave to go. Take it and be gone. By the laws of the Eldar I may not slay you at this time. And at this counsel I add, return now to your dwelling in the darkness of Nan Elmoth. For my heart warns me that if you now pursue those who love you, no more, never will you return thither. Alright, so a little break here. First of all, from the book, and second, I'm like, oh man, I just keep coughing, and I think I'm going to be sick, so I think this is going to be difficult to go through. I still have another page or so. So, Ale is very angry, obviously. His own wife and son just, vanish when he's gone. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, what do you expect when your son starts to argue, and then, his son starts to argue with him about his, all of his past and lineage, and then, obviously, Aradhel is talking all about Gondolin returning there, and he's literally just being like, no, you're staying here, because that's how he got Aradhel in the first place, almost forcibly. So, of course, something like that's going to happen eventually. But he rides off, and obviously, Curufin does not like him. They have a little bit of an argument, and I guess, he goes after them again. He doesn't really listen to Curufin, so bit of foreshadowing maybe. So we'll go back to the story to find out. Then Ale rode off in haste, and he was filled with hatred of all the Noldor, for he perceived now that Maeglin and Aradhel were fleeing to Gondolin, And driven by anger and the shame of his humiliation, he crossed the fords of Eros and rode hard upon the way that they had gone before. But though they knew not that he followed them, and he had the swiftest steed, he came never in sight of them until they reached the Brithiac, and abandoned their horses. Then by ill fate they were betrayed, for the horses neighed loudly, and Eol's steed heard them, and sped towards them. And Eol saw from afar the white raiment of Aradhel, and marked which way she went, seeking the secret path into the mountains. Now Aradhel and Maeglin came to the outer gate of Gondolin in the dark guard, under the mountains. And there she was received with joy, and passing through the 7 gates, she came with Maeglin to Turgon upon Amon-Gwarath. Then the king listened with wonder to all that Aradhel had to tell, and he looked with liking upon Maeglin his sister's son, seeing in him one worthy to be accounted among the princes of the Noldor. I rejoice indeed that Arda has returned to Gondolin, he said, and now more fair again shall my city seem than in the days when I deemed her lost, and Maeglin shall have the highest honor in my realm. When Maeglin bowed low, and took Turgon for lord and king, to do all his will. But thereafter he stood silent and watchful, for the bliss and splendor of Gondolin surpassed all that he had imagined from the tales of his mother, and he was amazed by the strength of the city and the host of its people, and the many things strange and beautiful that he beheld. Yet to none were his eyes more often drawn than to Idril, the king's daughter, who sat beside him, for she was golden as the Vanyar, her mother's kindred, and she seemed to him as the sun from which all the king's hall drew its light. But Eol, following after Aradhel, found the dry river and the secret path, and so creeping in by stealth he came to the guard and was taken and questioned. And when the guard heard that he claimed Aradhel as wife, they were amazed, and sent a swift messenger to the city, and he came to the king's hall. Lord, he cried, the guard have taken captive one that came by stealth to the dark gate. Eol he names himself, and he is a tall elf, dark and grim, of the kindred of the Sindar, yet he claims the lady Aradhel as his wife, and demands to be brought before you. His wrath is great, and he is hard to restrain, but we have not slain him as your law commands. Then Aradhel said, Alas, Eol has followed us, even as I feared. Both great stealth has it done, for we saw and heard no punishment as we entered upon the hidden way. Then she said to the messenger, He speaks but the truth. He is Eol, and I am his wife, and he is the father of my son. Slay him not, but lead him hither to the king's judgment, if the king so wills. Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty much what it says here. Eol actually ends up finding the secret passage because he just ends up following Aradhel into the secret guard. The dry river, which the guards are pretty much protecting over. But she says, well, I kind of knew this was going to happen, so yeah. Okay, back to it here. And so it was done, and Eol was brought to Turgon's hall, and stood before his high seat, proud and sullen. Though he was amazed no less than his son at all that he saw, his heart was filled with more the anger and hate of the Noldor. But Turgon treated him with honor, and rose up and would take his hand, and he said, Welcome, kinsman, for so I hold you. Here you shall dwell at your pleasure, save only that you must here abide and depart not from my kingdom. For it is my law that none who finds the way hither shall depart. But Eol withdrew his hand. I acknowledge not your law, he said. No right have you, or any of your kin in this land to seize realms or to set bonds, either here or there. This is the land of the Teleri, to which you bring war in all unquiet, dealing ever proudly and unjustly. I care nothing for your secrets, and I came not to spy upon you, but to claim my own, my wife, and my son. Yet if in Aradhel your sister, you have some claim, then let her remain. Let the bird go back to the cage, where soon she will sicken again, as she sickened before. But not so Maeglin. My son you shall not withhold from me. Come, Maeglin, son of Eol, your father commands you. Leave the house of his enemies and the slayers of his kin, or be accursed. But Maeglin answered nothing. I'm so sorry, guys. Then Turgon sat in his high seat, holding his staff of doom, and in a stern voice spoke. I will not debate with you, dark elf. By the swords of the Noldor alone are your sunless woods defended. Your freedom to wander there Your freedom to wander there wild. you owe to my kin, and but for them long since you would have labored in thraldom in the pits of Angband. And here I am king, and whether you will it or will it not, my doom is law. This choice only is given to you, to abide here or to die here, and so also for your son. So, yeah. Oh no, sorry, it keeps going here. So it's going to be a little further, so we'll see how long it lasts. I'm going to actually double check percentage-wise. We should be able to get it done. Okay, let's do this. Alright, let's go! Then Ael looked into the eyes of King Turgon, and he was not daunted, but stood long without word or movement, while a still silence fell upon the hall. And Aradhel was afraid, knowing that he was perilous. Suddenly, swift as a serpent, he seized a javelin that he held behind his cloak and cast it at Maeglin, crying, "The second choice I take, and for my son also. You shall not hold what is mine." But Aradhel sprang before the dart, and it smote her in the shoulder. And Ael was overborne by many and set in bonds, and led away, while others tended Aradhel. But Maeglin, looking upon his father, was silent. It was appointed that Ael should be brought on the next day to the king's judgment, and Aradhel and Idril moved Turgon to mercy. But in the evening Aradhel sickened, though the wound had seemed little, and she fell into darkness, and in the night she died. For the point of the javelin was poisoned, though none knew it until too late. A little break here before we go into the last part of the chapter. So yeah, Ael is so obsessed with bringing somebody back to his home, and he's just like, okay, well, since Aradhel is Turgon's sister, sure, she can stay, because it only makes sense that family before the marriage or whatever. But he kind of like has the point of Maeglin as his son, so he argues all that stuff, but obviously none of them want to go back. Aradhel or Maeglin, they're like, no, we're gonna stay here. We actually prefer it here, other than having a commanding angry father. Yeah, no thanks. We're gonna stay here. And I guess he not even accidentally, he was having that intent to kill. So I mean, like, I don't know. It's just crazy that, he kills his own wife. So I don't know. Kinslaying, I guess. Another kinslaying. And the darkness spreads throughout Arda. That sort of thing. So now we're going to finish the chapter. Let's do it. Alright. Therefore, when Ael was brought before Turgon, he found no mercy, and they led him forth to the Caragdur. There you go. A precipice of black rock upon the north side of the hill of Gondolin, and there to cast him down from the sheer walls of the city. And Maeglin stood by and said nothing, but at the last Ael cried out, "So you forsake your father and his kin, ill-gotten son. Here shall you fail of all your hopes, and here may you yet die the same death as I." Oh, wow. Then they cast Ael over the Caragdur, and so he ended, and to all in Gondolin it seemed just, but Idril was troubled, and from that day she mistrusted her kinsmen. But Maeglin prospered and grew great among the Gondolindrim, there you go, praised by all, and high in the favor of Turgon. For if he would learn eagerly and swiftly all that he might, he had much also to teach. And he gathered about him all such as the most bent to smithcraft and mining, and he sought in the Echoriath, which are the encircling mountains, and found rich loads of ore of divers metal. Most he prized the hard iron of the mine of Angabar in the north of the Echoriath, and thence he got a wealth of forged metal and of steel, so that the arms of the Gondolindrum, that's a hard one, were made ever stronger and more keen, and that stood them in good stead in the days to come. Wise in counsel was Maeglin, and wary, and yet hardy and valiant at need, and that was seen in after days. For when in the dread of year of the Nirneath Arnodiad, whew, that's a hard one too, Turgon opened his leaguer and marched forward to the help of Fingon in the north. Maeglin would not remain in Gondolin as regent of the king, but went to the war and fought beside Turgon, and proved fell and fearless in battle. Thus all seemed well with the fortunes of Maeglin, who had risen to be mighty among the princes of the Noldor, and greatest save one of the most renowned in their realms. Yet he did not reveal his heart, and though not all things went as he would, he endured it in silence, hiding his mind so that few would read it unless it were Idril Celebrimbor. For from his first days in Gondolin he had borne a grief, ever worsening, that robbed him of all joy. He loved the beauty of Idril and desired her without hope. The Eldar wedded not with kin so near, nor ever before had they any desire to do so. And however that might be, Idril loved Maeglin not at all, and knowing his thought of her, she loved him the less, for it seemed to her a thing strange and crooked in him, as indeed the Eldar ever since have deemed it, an evil fruit of the kinslaying, whereby the shadow of the curse of Mandos fell upon the last hope of the Noldor. But as the years passed still, Maeglin watched Idril and waited, and his love turned to darkness in his heart, and he sought the more to have his will in other matters, shirking no toil or burden, if he might thereby have power. Thus it was in Gondolin, and amid all the bliss of that realm, while its glory lasted, a dark seed of evil was sown. Very, very cool. Alright. That's the end of chapter 16, and wow, for me personally, that was a little tough to get through here. Sorry, making sure that everything's there. Yeah, so at the end of there, the whole thing of Eäl's death, they literally just like toss him off the wall, off of a precipice, pretty much, and that's how he dies. That's a scary death. That's a, whew, I suppose, and like all the people are just like, it's fine. Like, he deserved it. It's like, I don't know about that. And Idril kind of realizes this too, and she's just like, I don't know about these people anymore, because they just throw him off a cliff to die, and that's terrible. And then before that, Eäl's just like, he's pretty much cursing his own son, Maeglin. He's just like, this right here is how you're gonna die too, and you're gonna be like having strife, like internal strife and all that thing. But like, he's like, Maeglin still has the not so much blessings, just like he and Turgon are pretty much best buds, which is good for Maeglin at least. But now he's literally an orphan. Yeah, right? Well, I don't know. Kind of depends, because I don't even know how old he is right now. But both of his parents died, which is terrible. So imagine that, like Maeglin's mother, Aradhel, gets killed by Ael, his father, and then Ael gets tossed off a cliff. So that's kind of intense. But that's kind of like how the chapter ends, is that there's a lot of mistrust and dark seed of evil. And that's even in Gondolin, there's going to be something bad happening. And obviously it's not because of the fall of Gondolin, but it's that this is kind of how it starts in a way, I would say, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to do spoilers either, so so that's kind of the end of the chapter. Really excited. I think we're going to be almost halfway. I would say maybe like another 2 chapters and we're going to be like halfway done with the Silmarillion, which is crazy because it is a lot. It's a lot to unpack, a lot to read. But I'm glad that all of you who have been listening or watching, I hope watching, because I actually really love this YouTube format. So, and if you guys like seeing me, let me know. But if you want me to go back to just having my logo and just me talking, comment that too, because really it's up to you guys. I'm still uploading my old episodes as I record this, so I probably won't get feedback until the actual video is posted, which is going to be in a while. So and then obviously make sure to check out my book, The Lands of Arda. Yes, I have to plug it because it feels really cool being having to hold my own book. It's really, really cool. And if you guys check it out, I would greatly appreciate it. It is like the whole page, as you can see. So I'm going to work on that formatting for my next book, for it to be more organized. I didn't really specify that when I was working with the editors and whatnot. So, yeah. So hopefully the next books will be a little more cleaner when it comes to the pages. So we'll see about that. With all that being said, just be sure, especially on YouTube, to to subscribe to my channel. Well, it doesn't have to be just YouTube either. It can be on the Castbox or Spotify. So you can find it on those two platforms, because I can never get Apple to work. I don't know why. It's really weird and I don't like it, but you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. So on YouTube, Castbox, and Spotify, be sure to subscribe to my channel, like the episodes, and then comment of things that you enjoy, any favorite chapters, scenes of the Silmarillion, anything like that, any topics that you guys would like to suggest to me. I will definitely invite it and open it into this show, because it's really all about Tolkien stuff, because it doesn't have to be Silmarillion, it can be anything other than that, even his short stories. So let me know. And with everything being said, just stay tuned for the next episode. And may the light of Elbereth be with you all. Farewell!